Thanks, Antara, for that quick introduction. Get started. So I'm just going to get into the presentation mode. So welcome to this small webinar on a topic called Scrum Mastering is a leadership journey and it takes time. Right? So I'm pretty sure for some of you it would have caught your attention about how exactly Scrum Master or Scrum Mastering is related to leadership. And for many others, probably it's an experience that you also have faced so far, or you have experienced so far that both of them have got to do something, right? So nevertheless, whether you're new to Scrum Master role, whether or not you're playing the Scrum Master role, we are still going to get into some kind of a discussion. So you don't have to really worry if you're not a Scrum Master. But as long as you have some background in the Agile, and if you heard this term so far, that should be good to proceed in this webinar. So let me just move forward. Okay, so to begin with, I have this note. If you could read this. For those of you who are still not able to see my screen, let me read it for you. So I wanted to say that the experience shared here, especially in this webinar, is a collection of my coaching experiences, both as an independent coach and also when I work with in pair with other coaches, especially from Pete Behrens from TrailRich Consulting. So most of the information compiled and presented here is attributed to Pete, and it belongs to TrailRich Consulting from the copyrights point of view. Hence, I have a general request to the audience, to the participants. If you really want to or intend to copy or reuse or reproduce any of the content of this material, please seek a written permission in an email format, either from Pete or myself, because this is mainly we need to respect the legal interest of TrailRich Consulting. Okay, okay. So let's get to know each other a little bit. Generally don't do any one-way communication when I interact with my colleagues or with the Agile enthusiasts. It has to be a very dynamic discussion. So to begin, let me introduce myself very quickly. As Anta has already mentioned briefly in her introduction, I'm Jayaprakash. You can call me JP. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a consulting firm, and I'm also an Agile strategist and coach working for SolutionsIQ as a partner. So, I'm into Agile world from past 11 years. And I've been using Scrum, XP, Lean, and Kanban kind of techniques during implementations. I've trained so far several people, around 600 people in various organizations, and I've also played key role in driving some of the org-wide Agile transformation for large global enterprises. The range of people in those transformation varies from 200 to 4,000 people. And I believe that some of these strengths that I mentioned are the key enablers for my day-to-day work as a coach. So just to note them, it's self-awareness about myself, knowing my limitations and strengths has definitely helped me a lot. And then the kind of connect I establish and maintain whenever I get into engagements, the people connect, and also about servant leadership skills and strategic management skills. These are some things that I have recognized that these have come to help during my work as a coach. Okay, enough of me, and I'm interested in knowing something about you. So how would you do this? Can you guys just start typing in your role at least, so that I know, I get a pulse of what kind of people we have here in this forum? Can you guys start typing in your role, please? And if Antara, if you could start collating them and then pasting in the chat window.
Yes, sure. So we have Madhavi here. Madhavi is Scrum Master. We have Sikunj JP. Sikunj is a CSM again.
Okay.
Yes, we have Srinivas. Srinivas says he's a project manager. Hariharan Chandrasekhar is a program manager, JP. Sharat.
Okay.
Sharat is a mobile app entrepreneur.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, that's interesting indeed. Abhilash here works as a senior consultant Java developer with Capgemini. Amit Prakash is a CSM. Narsimha Raju, he just wrote his name actually, so I have yet to know his role. Dhanraj is a Scrum Master. Narsimha is a Scrum Master. Yes, I see his reply. Thank you, Narsimha. And Vidya Vrat is again a CSM, .NET architect.
Okay.
Yeah, and Satish we have, he's a project/program manager.
Okay, that's pretty good. It's a good mix of people. So is it all, or are we still getting some responses?
That's all. Satish's was the last one.
So,
yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Antara. Thanks for giving me this information.
Sure.
So it looks like we have a pretty good mix of people here, and we have quite a few CSM people, certified Scrum Masters, and some of you mentioned that you are a Scrum Master. You didn't mention as a CSM, and then a couple of project managers, program managers, and also an entrepreneur here, interestingly. Maybe you're looking for using Agile or something related to that. That's good to know that you have a mix here. And actually, it just suddenly reminded me $1 million question of whether becoming a CSM, will it make us a Scrum Master or not? I'm pretty sure you would have got this question in your olden days when you got certified. Because at least for those of you who got CSM certified a few years back, like I got my certification about 5 or 6 years back. It was just about 2 days of workshop that you attend. At the end of 2 days, you are certified as a certified Scrum Master. But I think recently it is also changed. And I think nowadays you need to write some written test and things like that. Hopefully it is also going to change to ensure that you also practice Scrum or to basically become a Scrum Master, apart from just getting a certification or attending a 2 days conference. Okay, so I'm proceeding with my slides here. Okay, so let's think about these thoughts which are coming up. The first one talks about what do we call this as? I think I've seen most of the Scrum Master getting into this thought, especially if you become a Scrum Master from your previous roles, including manager or architect and things like that. And once you are a Scrum Master, after some days, you start feeling this, right? Some people have felt this in my experience that I've interacted with. And there'll be a couple of other people who'll feel this too. They start working as a Scrum Master, and then they get this question in their mind when they get stuck. How the hell do I make this happen with such nuts in the management team or in the team or whatever, right? Especially when you can't make any change, or when you're unable to proceed further because of the environment or the limitations or the constraints of the environment that you work in. And then some other thoughts about your career. If you're a Scrum Master, at some point you would get this question: how do I grow? Do I have a career path? So I was interested to know how many of you have got these thoughts or any similar thoughts in your career as a Scrum Master. It could.
This Sikunj asking, how do I grow, is a common question that I have.
Right. Okay. So it's, yeah, that's true, Sikunj. You're true. the career-related question is the most common question most Scrum Masters get into that I've seen also practically in the coaching world. Okay, so keep these thoughts in your mind, and the whole point of this webinar is to actually try and attempt to get some answers to these questions and really get a deep dive into a Scrum Master journey. That's the objective of this session. So let's proceed. Okay, so before we get into the details of a Scrum Master journey, I wanted to really get a pulse again from the people present here in this conference about your understanding of Scrum. Can you again start throwing some ideas about what Scrum means from your perspective?
Hariharan has written iterative and incremental. That's what.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, iterative
and incremental.
So when it comes to the definition or understanding of Scrum, let me show you what are the typical responses that I get in when I interact with various Scrum Masters as a part of my coaching. Okay, some people said Scrum is the framework to make things happen. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so let me show some of the answers that I typically get when I ask this question. So some people say process, it's a process, it's a different process, it's a methodology. Some people do recognize it as a framework. And if they've just passed the exam, CSM exam yesterday, probably they would have given this answer, which says inspect and adapt framework for working on complex projects. This is a typical definition that comes from Scrum Guide, if you've gone through the CSM course. And then some people do recognize this as a simple way of doing things. And some also go to an extent where they can say it's a transparent way of doing things in a complex project. And many more definitions, right? We have various kinds of understanding or the different maturities in the way people have understood Scrum itself.
Yes,
and
like
this list was...
Dhanraj here himself has certain views of his own, the last one being that Scrum is a mindset, which Dhanraj points
Okay,
out.
that's very good to know, yeah. So that's if you're really seeing this Scrum as a mindset, definitely you've made an attempt to understand Scrum in deeper. In fact, Agile itself is a mindset and Scrum is just one way of doing it if you're on the same line of thought. Yeah, but I also see some more responses which says it's a time box framework for developing software by addressing the most important value piece of software being developed first. All this is accomplished by high-performing and self-organized team. That's wonderful. So the person who has written this basically has recognized. Oh, that's Dhanraj. That's wonderful. So Dhanraj, so you're true in recognizing that the whole Scrum or this phenomena depends on high-performing or self-organizing team, and Scrum Master has got a lot to do with this self-organized team or high-performing team. Okay, so we are going to get there. That's cool. Yeah, and also it's a mindset. That's beautiful. Now, for the discussion of for the purpose of this discussion, I would like to introduce a new perspective of looking into Scrum itself, and the rest of the discussion will be based on that premise that I'm going to set right now. Okay, so let me get into the next point. So, in my perspective, Scrum is just a learning framework and nothing more than this, right? It's a little hard to digest because people have all kinds of illusions and expectation that Scrum is going to give us some solutions, Scrum is going to prescribe something, or even if it is mindset, right? Even if you consider this as a mindset or a different way of working, it is. If you really want to compare or relate Scrum and Agile, we could probably map mindset to Agile and not to Scrum. Because if you really go through the Agile Manifesto and the values, that talks about the mindset of the leaders who experimented Agile for several years, and when they shared a common thought process among all their experiments, they realized that in all their experiments, they valued those items on the left more than the right, which you would have seen in the manifesto, and that is something to do with mindset, Agile mindset, being Agile. And Scrum is specifically a framework which will allow you to operate using the mindset. And I'm calling this, I and Pete, when we actually coach, we experience that it's a learning framework. It just gives you a framework with a bunch of practices which are around the people, around this notion of people. And whatever happens inside that is very specific to the context. It's a context specific thing, and it's specific, or it varies from one project to another project, one product to another product, one organization to another organization, one team to another team within an organization. And more than all these things, it varies from people to people. Let's say you're executing a similar project or developing a similar product, but the people who are going to work using Scrum are going to be different, and they're going to be unique. So it really depends on the people, how they use this framework, and in the process, if you really implement Scrum well, then it can expose certain loopholes and certain mess in the system if it exists, and it's really up to the people to react to that, to respond to that, the information that gets exposed, the difficulties or the loopholes that get exposed. So really, if you really ask a question about how successful the Scrum is or how successful the Agile initiative is, it depends on what happens when people face these realities that Scrum exposes as a part of the framework, and what do they do with it. If they don't do anything, if they don't react to it, Scrum by itself will not give us anything. So from that perspective, Scrum is just merely a framework meant for learning, and learning happens at all levels, at the individual level, at the team level, and the organization level, the leadership team level, and it is everyone's responsibility to respond to those learnings, make use of them, and then drive things towards the organization goal or the team's goal. So Scrum is really an enabler. So let me proceed here in the next slide. I'll have continuation of what really Scrum is. Scrum helps create an environment where change can be a norm and not an exception. Right? And in the Scrum adoption journey, the environment becomes so insecure in most of the organization because of the mess the Scrum can expose. So, and Scrum just stops there. It doesn't do anything else. The rest is all up to the people. And because Scrum does this, it is also important for us to understand as Scrum Masters or as leaders, it is fine if Scrum does this because it is going to drive productivity and responsiveness to adapt to the changing markets and the customer needs if we respond well to those realities. If you don't respond, nothing is going to happen. Right? So I would like to focus my future discussion here and also your thoughts on this premises, right? Apart from all the other thoughts about Scrum, let's understand that it's just a learning framework, nothing more than that, and all that it does is create an environment where change can be a norm, change can be a daily process, and not an exception. And because it is so, it can also make the environment itself very insecure to people, to the organization, because it can potentially expose mess in the system. And all we need to do is react to that, respond to that, and then make use of the learnings, and then drive towards productivity and responsiveness. in our attempt to adapt to changing markets and customer needs. This is the premises I want to set about Scrum. Okay, so if this is clear, I would move forward to the next slide. Let me know if you have any thoughts or questions at this point of time. Now, here is the real question, which is the focus of this webinar. The previous discussions were sort of groundwork for us to get here. So this question talks about who is a Scrum Master, right? Again, I would like to hear your thoughts. You could give me one-word definition, two-word definition, or a phrase or a sentence that you feel comfortable with.
Sharath writes change manager. Madhavi writes enabler, the servant leader.
Okay, that's interesting. Change manager, servant enabler, okay. Servant leader.
Srinivas writes that Scrum Master is the bridge between PO and the team to deliver things.
Okay, that's good.
There are more
so coming.
We have Dhanraj saying that a Scrum Master is a person who's a listening person between the team and various stakeholders, also a coach for the team.
Okay.
Vijay writes one who helps people to follow Scrum. Sikunj interestingly writes that he's the mother in crude terms of a team. A Scrum Master is the mother.
Right. So wonderful thoughts so far, right? That's a good collection. So if I were to pick some of the words from the responses I've heard so far, so some of them talked about enabler, some of them talked about the liaising person with various stakeholders, and the mother of the house or mother of the team now, if you were to consider, probably with the responsibilities and things like that, or maybe the characteristic of a Scrum Master. So pretty sure with this typical definition, impediment remover, the coordinator, in the team. I'm pretty sure the other person did not say this. I think he mentioned it's a person in between the product owner and the team. That's definitely better than saying mediator between management and team. So, and then some people do recognize a Scrum Master as a powerless leader, administrator, housekeeping person, facilitator, enabler. And I want you to keep thinking about this. Okay, so some of the thoughts that you've shared are definitely are telling me a lot of stories about your experience of Scrum Master. So I'm pretty sure those who have actually really managed to practice Scrum for a long time. As I was mentioning, your answers or responses are telling me a lot of stories about your Scrum Mastership, right? So for those of you who recognize this as an enabler or the liaising person who needs to do a lot of coordination, facilitation, and things like that, it tells me that you're speaking from your practice of trying to work as a Scrum Master. And those of you answered some of the typical definitions like your impediment remover, those kind of things. Obviously, you would have learned about Scrum Master and maybe in the beginning journey of practicing Scrum Mastership. So there is nothing called right or wrong here. All we are trying to do is how deep is our understanding and where should we head towards in our understanding about Scrum Master, and also getting a question, getting an answer to the question about, is Scrum Mastership really a serious career? If so, then what is involved in this career? That's what we are heading towards. Okay, so feel free to keep mapping your thoughts and then questioning You can question us, you can question me, or you can question yourself. And you can keep reflecting basically your thoughts. After we get this typical responses for the question which says who is a Scrum Master, let me go to a slide which talks about what a Scrum Master is not. Okay, and again I would like to hear your answers. So here I'm definitely looking for those potential wrong understanding of Scrum Master which you want to recognize that Scrum Master is definitely not this, right? If you want to say some words, please say that or please type that.
He is not an individual contributor. That's Dhanraj.
That's good. Okay, good to hear. Responses?
Yeah, Dhanraj
Okay.
writes he does not assign work. Vijay Nag writes that he is not a manager. Manish again says the same thing. He is not a manager. Madhavi is not a CSM. A Scrum Master is not a facilitator who does only administrative work.
Okay, so she's saying he's not a facilitator who only facilitates administrative
who does only
work.
admin work. Dhanraj again comes back with his thoughts. Dhanraj does that he does not decide on priorities. He also does not estimate.
Okay, that's cool. I think you guys have got the basics pretty right. So let me let me show some of my findings, of course, with all my learning experience that we have recognized as coaches and other colleagues about what Scrum Master is not about. Okay, so let me show you guys. So Scrum Master definitely is not an administrator. I mean, most of the Scrum Masters start here, especially when they are just out of the CSM course. Depending on how good the CSM course goes, depending on the interaction, some people come back with the takeaways that, oh, as a Scrum Master, I need to book a meeting room in the Outlook. I need to ensure that there are sticky notes, there are marker pens, and all this coordination. Blocking a room, if the room is not available, changing it in the Outlook calendar. All these are administrative tasks, and Scrum Mastership is not just about this. Definitely don't think that it's an administrative job. Okay, and of course some of you said that Scrum Master is not a manager, and I'm just putting it in a different word called boss, because sometimes there are architects who are bossy. There are manager and manager's manager who becomes Scrum Master. So obviously Scrum Master is not the boss of the team in any sense, right? And this is an interesting point and a debatable point. Scrum Master is not a messenger to the management. This is a typical pattern that happens when you speak to Scrum Masters. They reach a stage where all they have to do is keep reporting what's happening in the team with all kinds of reports, velocity, burn down chart, motion one, rally, keep the information up to date, and keep giving some dashboards to the management. Or if the management pushes some hard numbers on, okay, so guys, you need to increase your velocity by 20-40%, the same thing would be communicated back to the team as a messenger, mediator. This is definitely not a Scrum Master. Right? He is only a messenger to the management. And Scrum Master is not about that. Okay. And then typically Scrum Master is not the manager or a project manager, and also not the driver of the project. Right? Again, this is a debatable point. Now people say, okay, if Scrum Master is not the driver of the project, does it mean Scrum Masters have no accountability, no responsibility on the project results? This is a typical question I get. And what I really mean here by saying Scrum Master is not a driver of projects is that I was trying to say that Scrum Master is not really focused on project. Scrum Master is not really focused on driving the projects, which also includes driving the timeline, driving the schedule part of it, or even talking about the timely delivery, on-time delivery, budget delivery. Scrum Master's focus is not this. if this is not the focus of Scrum Master, then what else is a Scrum Master? We shall speak in the next couple of slides. Okay. So, now for the purpose of the rest of the discussion, again, as I mentioned, there is no right or wrong answer here. So I'm going to consider 3 keywords of Scrum Mastership, and I'm going to base my rest of the discussion around those words. Okay, those 3 words are Scrum Master as a real master. If you really see the word, Scrum Master is the master of Scrum. And then the facilitator and a coach. Okay, some of you already recognize these terms, but let's see what it really means by this. Okay. So before we proceed, I just want to know if there are any thoughts or suggestions to move forward. Just want to pause here.
Yes, so Dhanraj again. Dhanraj, thank you for being so active. He writes that it's a master who keeps the team focused.
Okay, that's wonderful. So you made a very good point there, and we're going to revisit this point again in the next couple of slides. So any other thoughts pending in the queue?
I would like to add here, Dhanraj again says that as a facilitator, he helps to facilitate between the team and the management.
Okay,
yeah,
that's good. Okay, so Dhanraj is talking about, yes, Scrum Master wearing both hats, master of the Scrum, and then facilitating between the team and the management.
Yes.
Definitely, that's
and the
one of
final
the
one is also as a coach. He coaches the team on agile processes. I think he's just expanding on the points that you have.
Sure. I think he's trying to map his thoughts to those 3 points. Yes. Now let's really look into a bit deeper on what exactly are the characteristics of the Scrum Master when you're wearing these hats. When you're as a master, what do you do, and what is your focus, and how does it get reflected in your behavior when you are a master or a facilitator or a coach. And also there are some personalities that is shown in a Scrum Master when you're playing these roles. Okay, so that's what I'm getting into. So next 3 slides will be the crux of this discussion. Okay, so please pay attention, and then we can definitely talk about some of the practical challenges and thoughts around them. Okay, I'm proceeding here. And so as a master, Scrum Masters guide their teams in their understanding and application of Scrum, lead the team in implementation of Scrum, enable the team to share responsibility, and continue to learn and grow their understanding about Scrum, about Agile. Right? If you really see these statements, we are talking about a master, and you can probably equate it to a martial arts teacher. We call him sensei in Japanese language, sensei, right? If you're a sensei or a martial arts teacher who knows your art very well, you mastered it like a Scrum Master, and if you're wearing the hat of a master, your obvious focus is to help others master the course or master the topic. So in this case, Scrum Masters help the team members to master the Scrum and the Agile concepts. So obviously your focus is on implementing the Scrum right way, and then increasing and enhancing and enriching the team members' understanding about the Scrum and guiding them in applying the Scrum to their real work. Right? This is your focus as a master, like any other martial arts teacher or sensei does, from the art point of view, from the Scrum point of view. Okay, and generally Scrum Masters are both the teacher and a student. Okay, so if you really reach a master state, you are at a maturity level where you recognize that it's an ongoing learning process, and not only team members are learning. As a Scrum Master, you're also going to learn, because whatever Scrum framework exposes, it is unique, it's new, to the context, and you have to learn a few things every day along with the team and really take your Scrum Mastership journey itself as a new learning on a day-to-day basis. So definitely you're a student as well as a teacher who can teach about Scrum as well as learn some new things about its application. And also you're a trusted source about Scrum, knowledgeable, and also not just knowledgeable, you're also very good in articulating about the Scrum and the Agile, especially the why part of it. If you're a Scrum Master and if you can't convince why Scrum, why Agile, or why some element of Scrum, definitely you're not there. You're not really a master, right? So that's the emphasis on masters. And you're also confident about it. And when do we become confident about whatever we teach? It's only when we practice ourselves. So without practicing Scrum, so just getting a CSM course from a 2 days workshop will never make us Scrum Masters. We got to practice it only after we see a real-time implementation of Scrum for quite some time. We don't get the confidence, and we cannot become masters. Okay, and more importantly, Scrum Masters are one of the team members. They are one among the team, not outside it. So you cannot say that, okay, I'm an expert in Scrum. All I'm going to do is just teach people about Scrum, but I do this for multiple teams, like 20 teams together or 3 teams together. Just use me as a resource about Scrum, right? That's not going to work out. If you're not there with the team, not connected, you're not there. That's it. You're not a Scrum Master. So I would like to pause here before I proceed to the next slide and seek your thoughts.
Sikunj, I think Sikunj wants to talk. Sikunj, you are enabled to speak, please. Would you share your thoughts?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, Sikunj, I can hear your voice.
Yeah, so I have a question on this thing, on the Scrum Master. So I will try to be very brief. There was a company that they wanted to implement, Agile and Scrum and everything, but they did not want to spend much. And what they wanted to do was that, they wanted to have somebody who would be just, coming for an hour or two maybe, and, basically guiding them, do a pilot project and see, how they land up, and then they wanted to implement it. So, if someone who is going to be, maybe an hour's job as a consultant, how would he be, basically working with the team and be with the team? So what are your thoughts on that part?
Sure, that's a very interesting question. Thanks for raising that question. So if you could go on mute, I'll continue so that even others can benefit from this. Okay, so Shikun just definitely brought in a good perspective there. I have seen this pattern too, and I myself was actually asked to play the role in the way Shikun explained, but definitely not in the hours. I was at least asked to come for a few days, and I was asked to go for about 2 to 3 months in a consulting, in a regular company as an external consultant, external Scrum Master. And I realized that I could never do justice to my role of a Scrum Master, even if I'm there every day for 2 to 3 months. No, it's not possible, right? Because Scrum Mastership, the responsibility and the scope of your responsibility and the limits are beyond being present for a couple of hours and teaching them what Scrum is, what daily stand-up is. It's beyond that. We have to become one among the team. We have to earn the trust of the team members and really become an insider, really become a master who can be trusted by others, who can be looked upon by others to really know more about why part of Scrum, why part of Agile. Definitely not to learn on how to do it, because most of the people know about it. Right? So okay, so let me proceed. I'm pretty sure we can reflect this thought again towards the end once I see all 3 aspects that we highlighted, and then we can definitely get back into a more discussion mode. Okay, I'm going to do that in another 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm proceeding here. So we saw what Scrum Masters do as a master and what Scrum Masters are, the personality, and then there's a point about what is the focus and what are the behavior that Scrum Master exhibit when they are really Scrum Masters, right? Scrum Masters focus on the why and allow the team to determine how, right? And they also use examples and their own experiences and stories to drive the team towards desired behavior, but they don't enforce them. They just use them in their day-to-day work. And the Scrum Masters realize that a real implementation of Scrum cannot be done with black and white answers, 0 or 1 kind of answers, because there would be a lot of trade-offs, there would be a lot of gray areas, and people need to get options to move on, right? So Scrum Masters focus on and also exhibit behaviors where they don't push the team towards taking black and white answers or taking black and white decisions. They encourage people to see through various options and see what is meaningful, what is useful for their context, right? This is about Scrum Master as a master. Let me proceed for the next one. So facilitator, right? Now, the previous slide talked about Scrum Master as a master of the subject matter expertise. It's not only about you being the subject matter expertise, you being confident about it. Can you also enable this learning about Scrum itself, about why part of Scrum, why part of Agile to your team members? Now, once you do this, or once you're able to understand this, as Scrum Master, we also need to focus on facilitation skills, which is a vital part of making things happen beyond education. The previous points were probably focusing around educating people about why Scrum and how to use it effectively, what are the benefits and things like that. But in a real world, to make this happen with all kinds of people who have their own individual egos and their own personality styles, their own background, their own context, their own pressure points, peer pressure, if you can't facilitate well enough, you can't really get any benefit of whatever you taught as a Scrum Master, right? So facilitation is a very important skill. Now, facilitators, as Scrum Masters, facilitators provide a container and strategies for engagement, right? Let me tell you what exactly I mean by this. Let's say you're a facilitator, you're a Scrum Master trying to facilitate a retrospective or sprint planning. As a good facilitator, you have to have a space created for the participants where people clearly know what is the focus of this meeting. What is the agenda? Who are the mandatory participants? And why are we here? And what exactly do we need to focus on during the meeting? And also, how do you ensure as a facilitator that every participant is participating actively? They're not feeling lost about it. They're able to raise their opinion, raise their viewpoints, share the viewpoints confidently and transparently. So this is the part of creating the container or creating the space and using various techniques and strategies for engaging the people in a live and active manner, right? That's an art. It has to be acquired. You cannot learn it by reading a book. You can probably pick up some techniques, but you got to apply it to become a good facilitator, right? And the rest of the points probably talk about the similar ones, which talk about as a facilitator, we should be very good in articulating the goal of certain meetings, certain ceremonies, certain activities, certain process or tools. The moment people lose focus on goal, that means the moment people lose focus on why they are doing something, they're lost. That means we have failed as a facilitator, right, in conveying that goal. And also I talked about ensuring there is a transparent environment where equal voices can be heard, where differing viewpoints can be encouraged, and they're not suppressed by some people who are very dominant. How do you ensure you create such a space? That's a part of facilitation. And also good facilitators continuously monitor the interaction that happens, obviously as a silent observer, and intervene as appropriate. If there is a need to intervene, we need to. right? But then obviously we might intervene only to make the interaction more effective, not to throw upon our own ideas or do something else, right? But we have to make the meetings, especially the Scrum ceremonies or any important discussion, very, very effective and useful and connected to the goal. And it is for this reason we might need to intervene after we monitor or during the monitoring part, right? This is the key skill of a facilitator. Okay, and facilitators are clear, open, and transparent. You cannot be biased as a facilitator, right? You cannot be biased towards a person's opinion. You cannot be biased towards the solution. You cannot be biased towards your own previous experiences about technology or about whatever you're trying to solve. So this goes back to the question or the thought about, can a technical lead play the role of a Scrum Master? Can an architect play the role of a Scrum Master? Can a manager play the role of a Scrum Master? All these questions lead to this point. You can, provided when you're facilitating something, if you can keep those your past experiences shut off. Can you keep those emotions and other ideas that come in within yourself due to your previous avatar? Can you keep them low, or can you turn them off? Can you be objective? Can you allow people, the other people, to actually throw upon their ideas without you getting influenced by your own past, right? If you can do this, why not? But most people feel it very difficult. It's a natural tendency that your previous project leader wakes up, your architect wakes up, and then you end up intervening or pushing your thoughts or intervening too much without allowing the people to do what they want, right? And also the other key aspect of being a facilitator, you got to be present and in the moment. If you really learned about Lean and Kanban, there is a Japanese term called Gemba. Gemba means go to the place where the work happens, on the ground, right? So obviously you cannot be a good facilitator by ensuring that meeting room is set up, everything is there, and then things are happening, and then you cannot say that things will just move smoothly. I mean, unless you have such a confidence about the maturity of the team. Otherwise, you got to be there, and it's not about just you being physically present there. You have to be in the moment. You need to know what's happening. Is it going in the right direction, or is it being open and transparent, and how do I bring the people back to the track if they're out of the track? You have to be in the moment as a facilitator, right? That's again a hard and acquired skill. It cannot be just learned by reading a book. Right. Now coming back to the focus part of the facilitator, focus on what is happening, and they use paraphrasing techniques and mirror conversation. That means if they want to ensure that they don't bias or they don't push their own ideas, all they need to do is, if they hear something, some views from the participants, they can just rephrase. For example, I'm just trying to do a paraphrase example here. Let's say I'm hearing some thoughts from some bunch of people, and other people are having a different thought. Then I might use few sentences like, okay, so guys on the right hand side, I'm hearing from you guys that you want to do this, you want to do this, and this. Is that correct? Did we hear properly? This should be my question back to them. And obviously, I'm not just going to say about it, I'm also going to write them. I'm going to visualize and paraphrase and mirror what they are speaking, what they are thinking, and allow them to decide whether it was the same thing that they thought, or is there any misinterpretation. I'm not going to do any judgment, right? And also another tough part of being a facilitator is you got to report the behavior and describe the feelings, whether or not they're good, they're wrong, they're right. You have to be objective about it. You cannot be biased to show only the positive things and hide the negative things, right? You cannot be. You have to, most of the times you will be very uncomfortable doing that, right? And also, a lot of times there will be perceptions that will be driving, right? Some people will have preconceived notion about some other people or product owner or whatever it is, and then they always will be speaking or interacting with those perceptions in mind, right? So as a Scrum Master, as a good facilitator, you got to debunk the perception, right? Probably check what the perception is and really see what is the reality. Perception could be different, and it could be different from people to people. So seek the right feedback, reflect it back, so that everyone in the room or everyone in the team knows what we really are speaking about, right? Okay, so this being facilitator, let me move to the coach one, and then we can open up for 5 to 10 minutes discussion to wind up the discussion. As a coach, Scrum Master, as a coach, assess and reveal team strengths and weaknesses with the team. That means you do it in a transparent manner. And you use this technique of asking powerful questions, right? This comes from some skills about asking powerful questions to engage a learning mindset, and also being a very good listener and listening for spoken things and unspoken things, verbal communication versus non-verbal communication, and powerful questions, right, which will make people think before they say anything, right? That's what this powerful question mean. And then guide the learning of team through mentorship, through role modeling and applying whatever you're trying to say. So depending on what kind of a mature team you're dealing with, let's say you're dealing with a beginner team of an Agile team or Scrum team, you may want to role model certain things to show them how to do certain things. But as and when you allow them or give them some room to improve, experiment, you probably get into a mentor mode where you just are there for providing any guidance. And also you need to force people to apply. You cannot really work in a theoretical fashion, right? Neither as a Scrum Master nor as a team. So you have to really focus on enabling people to apply what they're trying to learn, what they're trying to see. And then coaches again, so comes back to why. If you really notice, the previous 2 slides when we started, a master started with focus of why. Why Scrum, why Agile? And then when it comes to facilitator, it was really speaking about how do you make your facilitation, so it's about how and what happens in a ceremony and how do you facilitate, what do you facilitate and things like that. But the moment you are in a coach's perspective, you again come back to why, because ultimately why is the one which will make a team self-sufficient, right? Which will enable team's ownership and not your ownership, not project manager's ownership. Right? If you really want to build a self-organizing and self-empowered, high-performing team, you have to stay focused on why and allow the team to figure out what and how. Okay, that's really important to note here. And then again, of course, you provide options, examples, and stories so that people can choose from various options as a trigger point, a start point, but allow them to decide. So if you really see this sentence, if there are conflictful situation, conflictful thoughts, expose those conflicts with good facilitation skills and foster collaborative resolution, collaborative decision making within the team, right? So let the team decide, let the team choose what they want to do. Right? And you can also provide options, examples, considerations so that they can consider, but really allow the team to decide. Don't decide, don't force, don't drive. Sometimes we also call as don't manipulate, right? Whereas I've seen some smart chaps really good with people skills, and they give some options to the people, and somehow or the other they'll ensure that people come back to his track or their track. Right? That's called manipulation. Manipulating the mind is like manipulating the mindset so that people, you're free to do whatever you want, but at the end of it, you come to my way, right? So this kind of leadership is also called as achiever leadership in the leadership terminology. At the end of the day, you achieve what you want to do, directly or indirectly, right? That's definitely not a good sign for a coach, right? You got to be probably a catalyst and nothing more than that. Okay, so continuing, coaches are, again, experienced agilists. It's not just about Scrum. You have to be an experienced agilist, and you have to be knowledgeable in team dynamics. So if you really notice here, we have already disconnected ourselves from Scrum. We're speaking about agility, we're speaking about team dynamics, we're speaking about people. Right? So as a Scrum Master, if you don't want to get into a coach mode, you have to focus here. And you're also a situational leader. You know how to use situational leadership model based on the needs with an aim of learning and growing the team. And you got to be a catalyst for change. And you have to be neutral at any point of time. You have to be objective without any individual biases and independent from the team. Right? And then self-aware. You got to know about yourself. You have to be open for constructive feedback, constructive criticism, and you should also recognize your own limitations. Only then you are in a coach mode. And again, one important thing to note here, when you're a Scrum Master, when you're focusing on the why of Agile and Scrum, you're really with the team. When you're a coach, you're probably detached from the team. Right? Obviously, this only happens when you've gone through the mastership, facilitator, and you've gained enough trust, you've increased the maturity of the team, and then you can be detached with the only intention of looking things from outside the system. Right? As a coach, if you're stuck inside the problem, inside the system, you won't be able to see the big picture. Hence, you got to step out, or probably stay on the boundary, so that you have one step outside the team, one step inside the team, and see things from the boundary or outside. Right? Only then you can probably reflect things well in an unbiased manner. Okay, so that's some of the points, and I know that not all of this can be easily understood just by going through the slide. We obviously have to discuss more about this, practice these things, and also discuss some practical challenges. So the way it goes is, this session was meant to trigger some thoughts in you and really give you a different perspective about Scrum Mastership. And I have one more slide which talks about what is beyond this, right? So once you get enough thoughts, feel free to connect with me to discuss these in detail, keeping your context, your challenges in mind, and we can definitely have some very good discussions around how we can benefit from each other's experience. I'm looking forward to learn more new things. So this is my the last slide about these three areas. So again, as far as behaviors of coach is concerned, there is an important point about encouraging both or and over either or. So this is something similar to what we said about black and white or gray. So as real coaches, you encourage people to come with both this as well as that, this and that. You are never going to say either this or that. You're never going to enforce either this or that, right? You're going to encourage people on this as well as that, this and this, and then see what makes sense. That should be your focus. And then again, of course, ask powerful questions, use options, stories, and allow the team to decide. Let me just show you last couple of slides, and then we can start with a couple of questions and then wind it officially, and we can do all other discussions offline. Okay, so the coach's journey, which we just talked about, master to facilitator to a coach, just doesn't stop here. It actually begins. Okay, so basically a facilitator to a coach, you can actually end up becoming a change agent if you can really make a change happen at team level, teams level. And by doing this, you are enabling team's agility or team level agility. And it just doesn't stop there. You can proceed. If you can acquire these skills and operate effectively, you could even proceed towards becoming an agile leader who could drive organizational agility, who could help organization transform. You could pretty much operate at any level and still be a coach or change agent with agility and Scrum concepts, and you can enable organization agility. So if you really see, we started off with administrator and impediment remover to good facilitator, a good Scrum Master, and then a master to a facilitator to a real coach, and then a change agent and agile leader. We can't speak about change and agile leader in this session because that's a very advanced topic and requires a lot of other discussions around it. So we can do that on some other day. So I wanted to say that this is the long-term journey. in my experience, Scrum Mastership is definitely minimum 5 to 8 years journey to really become a good Scrum Master and make changes happen in an organization, and eventually if you can drive organization transformation. And I myself am in this journey. I'm somewhere between coach and change agent at this point of time. Right? So that's just to give you some practical examples. So otherwise, I will just open the forum to ask 1 or 2 questions. We go to a few slides where you can note down my contact details, and then we can come back to this discussion part. Okay, here is my connection information. I'm available on LinkedIn, Gmail, SolutionsIQ, and my phone number is available here. So a few who are dropping, who are leaving, I just wanted you to take this thought as the last point, and then we can just get into a couple of discussions. So the thought I wanted to drive you towards the end before you go home was this. Remember, the task of the leader is to get his people from where they are presently to where they have not been or they have never been. This is the goal. This is what will make us as a Scrum Master who can build, develop a team and take them from what maturity level they are into a new level which they have never been to. And it really takes time, and it's a leadership style. It's a leadership journey, and we have to remember this. Okay, this was the point I want to drive towards the end. And thanks all the participants, and thank you, Antara, for organizing this and making it a successful event. Okay, so catch you folks later, and feel free to connect with me in the future, and then we can continue this learning together.